May 21st, 2022. I taped this morning Channel 4 for some reason, I guess, to have some alternative, like a second look at the world through a different filter or eye, perhaps. So I went with Channel 4 for whatever reason. It doesn't have the peacock displayed. Instead, it's got some other symbol. And the person who's speaking, who I don't know who she is, there's no label that shows her name that I found for this piece. It says on the banner, it says Speaker Nancy Pelosi to be denied communion. Excuse me, by something called an archbishop. Now, in my life frame, I went to something called a St. Dominic's 1 year, actually 2 years. When I got there, this word theology, first time I ever heard it, because up until that point, I mean, there was some Episcopalian, like, you go into this, has no ornate anything. I mean, like, religion was gone pretty much by the time I arrived. Like, Lynn and Lou didn't have really religion. The local area wasn't, I mean, it was not like, I don't know, 1950s, 60s, where it was like a big part of their life. Like, the community was already gone. Like, it was already in some kind of degradation. So as a child, there was no real, I mean, like, you don't know that religion's being withheld from you, but you learn, like, now I'm learning, I'm like, now what are they trying to say about that? I'm like, all right, so let me walk myself through this, because it does not come naturally. I'm like, all right, so this guy's saying that she can't have communion. Communion to these people, I think, I've always heard them use the words the blood and the body of Christ. And I'm like, so are they saying that they're not going to send Nancy Pelosi help, even though she's surrounded by the enemy? Because she said something about abortion, which I can't even follow that storyline or headline either. So now the Catholic Church, they're deserters and defectors. They're in this wealthy stance somewhere in the world, and one of their own blood is in the field, and they're denying sending help and rescue to Nancy Pelosi? What kind of an organization is that? I mean, that doesn't make sense, although the whole world doesn't make sense at this point. But here's what it looks like.
Well, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will no longer be able to receive communion in her hometown of San Francisco. The conservative archbishop in that city said that she is...
And last time I checked, he doesn't even look Catholic. I mean, he doesn't look like brother to, I mean, like, are there terrorists? I mean, like, are they hiding in other people's religion? Is that why the religion got knocked out in North America? I'm really seriously concerned for my son. I don't know where it's safe. There's no sense of this community. There's no real entry point. Like, I mean, normally you're born, your parents have religion, you take on whatever your parents are. There's none of that in New York since I arrived.
He's banning...
I'm trying to look for it and find pieces of it. I just don't see it.
Banning Pelosi from the Holy Sacrament due to her support for abortion rights. In an announcement, the Archbishop wrote that until Pelosi was willing to publicly renounce her stance on abortion or stop speaking about her Catholic faith, she will be denied communion. All right, we want to take a turn now. That was the news. It's time for a boost. I'm ready.
Because I also saw Cardinal Timothy Dolan. He's the one that I saw speak to go over to Poland. And I saw him This morning he was on some community speak summit thing. It had a fish and it had NET in the middle of it, so I paused to watch that for a few minutes to see if I could figure out how he defines religion or how he wears it. So this way I can emulate that since is that what, I mean, he's the closest looking religious figure that they show on the television for this area for what I look like. So that gets confusing. So I was watching him speak for a little bit. He had on two other people. They were dressed in black with a little white. And again, I don't have the proper words or vernacular for it. I went to school in that Catholic label for 2 years, but it was 1 year of theology for sure, and that's where I got Canadian French Canadian was the textbook that they taught out of. I don't know what 7th and 8th grade taught. So that gets confusing because that was all within the same facility in North America. But it was, again, like with anything, it wasn't being taught. Like there's no congruence, there's no articulation with the two adults I had at home. I mean, it really is like almost like a foster family, although I think when they're fostered, like people actually, well, I mean, they supposedly want the child. I can't say the same for the household I entered. So this trying to like figure this human thing out and where do you fit and where do you belong and what are you supposed to do? Where are you supposed to stand? What are you supposed to say? Like there's none of that. But then people have these expectations. Like they had like a really great couple of generations apparently somewhere in the world, and then they think that the ancestors should just, when the new generation arrives, like they should just know. Yeah, it's so broken. It's not working that way. Especially, at least in New York, it's not working that way. I mean, I'm looking for answers and like what their expectations are. It's just really, it's all over the charts. It's all over the map. It's very confusing. And therefore it's hard to lead the children that followed me here in any kind of pattern for some kind of future, because I don't even know what they expect of me. There's been no planning in receivership and responsibility. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.